Our audience, Professor Pia Hargrove, is an activist, a speaker, an educator, and a mental health expert. Uh, that includes social work. Professor Pia, what kind of proper treatment is needed to start the healing process?
Oh, okay. So, I mean, I wanted to first pause and honor that we're in the month of May and looking forward to next week actually being Mother's Day weekend. So, I'm not usually on here that time. So, I wanted to make sure to shout out our mothers and our caregivers out there because our postpartum mental health collectively is something that's challenged as all women, but especially those of us of African descent. And we often sometimes will focus a little bit more on mothers who have recently given birth and not take into consideration the motherhood journey, which is many, many years, and the challenges to our mental health that are presented along the time. So when we think about our healing, it is first identifying that there's something we need to heal from, that there's something that we're challenged with. So I really want to encourage in this time for us to think in particular about maternal mental health and in our mental health in general to be aware that sometimes we have feelings that are not comfortable, especially as mothers. Some of the things to think about around postpartum depression in particular is not feeling connected to your baby, maybe not being excited, feeling excessively sad, unusual amounts of crying, being angry or moody. And first, acknowledging that you do feel this way and having at least one person that you feel you can trust and be honest with about those feelings. And then looking towards our healthcare system. So certainly we always have Nicole on here, Nurse Patricia, and Dr. Giddings to share about our health resources and community. So if you do have health insurance, most of the time your health insurance has a copay availability for mental health care. So you can talk to your primary care physician and then look forward to seeking out a therapist, either a licensed social worker or a licensed mental health practitioner. But again, someone that you could speak to in more depth about what you're feeling and experiencing. And then sometimes it might be getting it off your chest. That's what's necessary. And you might be able to begin the healing journey just with speaking and releasing those feelings. Sometimes it might be a little bit more. We might need medication. But thinking of our minds, as I always say, are such powerful tools. We really reveal our brilliance through our minds, but yet we'll often emphasize care on the outside, taking care of our hair, getting haircuts, our nails done, all these exterior things, and not putting the care and attention on our mental health. So, in that healing journey, is thinking formally about a therapist, but certainly mobilizing what I call your roots crew. Who are the people that care for and also hold you accountable in this particular season? And that can change, especially when you enter motherhood. That might change. It might look like different people. And we're very prideful people, but to express where you need help and support is important because we're often thinking, oh, I'm going to mind my business, or why is this person in my business, or I don't want to share with others. But then we might be suffering in silence. So really identify people that you trust, that you can be honest with, and share what you need to be supported. And for those of us on the outside looking in, if we see friends that might be struggling and we might have some concern, express that. Reach out and say, I'm just wondering, especially for mothers, everyone's always focused on the kids or the baby. And I want to check on you. How are you doing? How can you best be supported? What is something that I can do to help you at this time? Because it might be as simple as picking up groceries or, you know, just creating a respite of an hour of time for someone to decompress. But these are all things that are very important. But because we don't speak to each other or we are concerned about being in somebody's business or someone being in ours, we don't express what we need that can support us best.
Professor Pia, there are so many components to mental health, and one of the main components is social media. This has been the number one thing that's been talked about. Um, uh, how do you your lens?
Absolutely. So social media is obviously a real concern for people of all ages. We have so many images that we already have been marketed to, whether it's riding the subway, pop-ups on our screens when we're watching things, when we're listening to things. And in addition, we have so many different social media platforms with so-called social media influencers who have completely altered their bodies, altered their faces, and have presented this image of a human, especially to our young people, in a way that's not natural, that's not realistic. And we have people really aspiring to have body types and change themselves in ways that are not healthy, that are not done with care, and can be very detrimental. So I definitely urge all of us to kind of keep in check what is our social media screen time. Our phones will keep a record of that, because I think even for adults, we're often surprised about how much time we spend on these media outlets. And certainly for parents and caregivers out there, to use your sort of power if your child has a cell phone or iPad or some other media where you are able to monitor that screen time. You could put parental controls. And I know with our adolescents, they don't like it to happen, but it's necessary for us to put the parental controls to limit the screen time, to also be talking to our young people to find out what are the channels that they're looking at, who are the influencers that they're following, and for us to do our homework also and see who are they following. Can we also set up a page where we're following some of these people to see what's going on, so that we're having the open discussions?
Yes, millions of people are struggling with mental health challenges, and what we want to do this morning, we want to bring in first Jeff to basically pose a question to you, because we're all affected. We're all affected at some point with our mental health. Jeff, good morning. How are you? Happy to see you, brother.
I'm doing well, JR. It's great to see you and all the fellow panelists, and thank you to all the listeners out there this morning.
So Jeff, Professor P is here. We're talking about mental health awareness and the importance of it. How do we heal? What question would you like to ask her this morning?
Well, good morning, Professor P. It's so good to see you and have you back on the show this morning. I wish you were here every week, because we have questions about mental health, I think, every week.
Good morning, Jeff. How are you? It's so good to see you.
Doing well, doing really well. This is, you touched on it with JR's question there about social media and what have you. And I'm really a big supporter of getting outside, walking in our green spaces. It's easy for me. I live here in Central Oregon. I can be at a beautiful place in 5 minutes, and going for a great walk. But for people in our cities, it's a little more difficult, but there's a lot of green space. I know that in New York and Brooklyn, it's actually a lot of green space. How important is it that we unplug, grab a friend, and just go for a walk, whether we talk or not, just to have that companionship and to get outside, breathe some fresh air, and be in the green space?
Absolutely. I'm glad you raised that, Jeff. Our green spaces are so important both to our mental health, that you can take a walk and not realize you are practicing mindfulness, because in each of those steps, you're breathing. It's sort of a reset, literally, of the body as we're taking those walks. Thanks for acknowledging we're not in Oregon, but definitely here in New York, we do have a significant amount of green space that many of us here, right, Pastor Straker, we have advocated for, to make sure that our Prospect Park has been redesigned and remodeled with new entrances to the park along Flatbush Avenue entrance. And then we have so many other playgrounds and parks and walkways, including Eastern Parkway, including Ocean Parkway, where it is a thoroughfare, but in the center there's seating, there's some grass, there's some trees. So you really can find that respite, even if you decide, if you're not as close, I'm going to take the train a couple stops and I'm going to get off here and take the walk, or take an extra walk that's a little bit further away from your regular stop if it's safe to do so. Because the breathing in the fresh air, literally taking the time to smell the flowers. It's May. So a lot of people, even outside their homes, have some beautiful gardens planted. So it's a moment to take and refresh. And also thinking about here in New York City, our Parks Department has initiatives where you can get supplies and everything to do a block cleanup and planting with your block. So if you are in a block that does not have a lot of green, but maybe you have some tree wells that are filled with garbage, you can organize your block. This is a perfect time to do it between May and June, to get these supplies from New York City Parks Department and do some planting activities on the block again to think about beautification, mindfulness, taking care of our bodies, making sure that we're in motion and getting the movement we need for our physical health as well.
Thank you,
Thank you
Professor.
for pointing all that out, because I know it's a beautiful time of year in New York City and many of our cities as spring has come and everything's in full bloom. So get out there and take a walk.
Definitely.
Audience, if you're just joining us, we're having a conversation around mental health and healing this morning. Our mission here at the Reset Talk Show is to help break the stigma. We're gonna ask Dr. Giddings to pose a question. I mean, this is a very hot topic. This is a conversation that we must have. Audience, tell a friend to jump on right now. Professor Pia is breaking it all down. Dr. Giddings, your question, please.
Yes. Good morning, panelists. Good morning, everyone. Welcome back, Pia. Good to see you.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. So I'm going to kind of go back to, the postpartum depression conversation you had initially. And not only postpartum, but maybe even if you're going through any kind of cancer treatments, et cetera, most of your family members, they don't want to, accept that something's going on, right? And they can handle it themselves, et cetera. Even if you ask, et cetera, you keep going back. What are some of the ways you would recommend to get them into some sort of, mental health help? Because a lot of them are in denial and think that nothing's going on or they can handle it themselves.
That is a very good point, that people are in denial and different belief systems on getting better, or that I don't have this thing, or it's not going to conquer me, which is all wonderful to have a positive mindset. But we need the support and care of family members, of friends, of neighbors. So if you're sort of the onlooker to the person that may be struggling, it's really being a presence. So we have so much technology, utilize that technology to reach out throughout the day. Maybe if you've taken your walks, I do this a lot, like send a picture of a tulip that you saw on your walk to that person. It's things to let them know not only are you thinking of them, you're caring for them, and you're extending like this little extra beautiful thing to them for inspiration. Really, if the person is willing, maybe that you can accompany them to a doctor's appointment. And if they have concerns, or you have them, to write them down ahead of time, because we all of us, we get to the doctor, Dr. Giddens, we forget everything and then we're great. So it's like writing the things down that you are concerned about, the thoughts that maybe are concerning. Sometimes with different medications, our memory, especially with cancer treatment, can be compromised. So writing the things and having that ahead of time in your list. And in that list, be sure to include any medications that you are taking, because sometimes medications that we're on will affect our emotional health. And as we have also been part of the legalizing marijuana, let's also acknowledge that the more freedom we have of using substances without the stigma means people are also using more substances. So if we think about marijuana usage, we think about mushrooms right now, which a lot of people are using. We think about alcohol and other prescription medication that we may take an extra pill or two because we like how it feels, but then we don't talk about these things when we show up at our therapist or our primary care physician. And those may be the variables that are affecting how we feel emotionally. So, especially when you're the friend or the relative that cares, you may know what's actually going on. So to kind of hold that accountability with care and love, to bring all the things to the forefront, and just really being honest with yourself and others. So with the denial piece, it's having the loving, caring friend or family member or someone that will be that roots crew to hold you accountable to what they're experiencing of you, and going with you to get the care. Because sometimes we just need someone to go with us. It's really hard to make the steps by ourselves. And when we recognize financial crises, lack of support around if there's childcare or other elders that we're caring for in the home, we may feel we don't have the time. So being that support to folks also so that they have the time to get the care that they need.
Thanks for that.
Thank you, Professor Pia. This is such an important conversation, Mental Health Awareness Month, and we have Professor Hargrove here the activist, the speaker, the educator, the mental health expert and social worker, talking us through this. We're having this very important conversation about breaking the stigma with mental health. So I would like Pastor Straker to jump in and pose a question to Professor Pia Hargrove.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, fellow panelists and listening audience. And it's so good to be here once again. Professor Pia, it's always great to have you and your expertise in talking about mental health and enlightening us every time you come on. You're right. Here in New York, we do need more green spaces. We are the concrete jungle, and I know I love to see the green spaces. I don't know if I like to experience them, as I'm having a heavy allergy day. So grass and trees are not my friend. But it does something to me when we're in those spaces, and when we have the opportunity to see, that's why I love going to Miami or LA, the palm trees, the grass, all of those things. It warms my heart and just does something to my psyche. And so, we need these kinds of things. We need time where we can get away and just refresh.